So welcome to today's live stream, everyone. I could not be more excited for today. This is actually the very first time I have done a co-host on our live stream. I know. I just started doing this live stream a few months ago, and so it's kind of been new for me. And today we are visiting with Dr. Nicole Cain. Dr. Nicole Cain is fabulous. I recently connected with her. We did a podcast on the subject of how to heal anxiety from the inside out. Dr. Nicole is an anxiety expert, really, like a holistic anxiety expert. And so on today's live stream, we are going to be answering your questions together about anxiety. And also, Dr. Nicole is going to be sharing some insights and maybe even some pro tips to help you with anxiety from her new book, Panic Proof, which is coming out here pretty soon, October, right?
Yes, October 8th.
Oh,
yes.
Woo. Okay, so we'll learn more about that. But, you know, the reason why I really wanted to talk with Dr. Nicole, honestly, is because we recorded a podcast together, a recent episode of Love, Happiness, and Success that we did that was so much fun. And in this podcast, you should check it out. And if you're not already connected, Love, Happiness, and Success podcast, subscribe. You can get everything. But check out this latest interview with Dr. Nicole, because in it, she did a deep dive into the origins of anxiety, why anxiety begins to manifest itself in our bodies, our minds, our hearts, but also really talking about deeper and more enduring ways to not just like cope with anxiety, but actually how to heal it. And I thought it was just such a phenomenal interview, and that we reached out. I was like, Dr. Nicole, you want to do a live stream with me? And you were like, yes. So here we are together today to answer your questions. And so if you've been dealing with anxiety, Nicole and I would love to hear all about it so that we can provide insight and perspective, and maybe even a little bit of guidance that would help you. So we'll give everybody just a second to get settled in here. We do have a couple of questions that have come in advance, which is always so amazing. You're obviously welcome to leave questions for us in the comments, that we can get to. But I do also have, oh dear, I am messing this all up. Okay. Now, it's live. Here is a link to a thing that I put together for us. If you go to my website, growingself.com/dear /Dear-Lisa, you can submit a question for Nicole and I anonymously. I am so aware that, we could talk about some very personal things on this live stream. And so you're welcome to leave any questions for us in the comments. But if you want to share something that you don't want, to be like publicly known on social media, we have a way for you to communicate. So, okay. Well, Nicole, as we start to wade into this pool, is there anything that you want to say, or would like listeners to know about you? I mean, for those who may have missed the podcast on Monday, what should people know about you before we start answering questions about anxiety?
I'm so honored and happy to be here, and that everybody experiences anxiety to some level, whether it's just a little bit of irritation or agitation, or like, oh, I'm just so frustrated kind of a feeling, all the way up that spectrum to sheer panic and crisis mode.
Right.
And so everyone is welcome. I'm so honored to be here. I've been on all ends of the spectrum, and I'm here to share with you what has helped me overcome anxiety, what's helped my clients overcome anxiety. I'm just delighted to share the message. And I adore Dr. Lisa. Like,
we have a good time. We have a good time together, Nicole. Like, I think we're sort of cut from the same cloth. So
totally.
That's
so
wonderful.
I'm here for it. Ask all your questions. I would love to answer all of them.
Good deal. Well, hello, everybody. I see some hellos coming in. And here, let's just actually, can we just dive into a question? I had a listener reach out in advance of our call with some questions. And if it's okay with you, let's just go ahead and dive in. So let me pull this up for us. And I'm going to come right over here. Okay, so this is somebody who submitted a question anonymously through that form that I shared with you guys. And hold on, oh my gosh. So this is the thing with stuff being live, like things happen in the moment technologically sometimes that are a little bit annoying and that need to be dealt with. So I had this pulled up and then it disappeared. Oh my gosh, you guys, talk amongst yourselves.
Well, while you're finding that,
Like Nicole, tell a joke. No, I'm just kidding.
I know so many fish puns actually, but I was going to say somebody resonates with this experience where if anyone watching has done a live or done something that's really time sensitive and you feel like it isn't working or technology's failing you and there's just like this sense of adrenaline rising, is the very best thing that you can do is give yourself 60 seconds, because 60 seconds isn't going to make or break in most cases what's going to happen. But the more activated that we get, the less able we're going to be able to access our problem solving brain and mind. So when I'm feeling really rushed and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to get on this interview or I have this call and I don't know where the link is or Firefox crashed. Right. So the best thing you can do is just be like, all right, I have 60 seconds. You just take a big breath. You exhale really deeply, activate the vagus nerve, and it won't take 60 seconds, probably more like 10 seconds. And you're going to be like, okay, I got this. And then you'll be able to create a solution. So just like, that was such a great metaphor.
No, but like, do you see that? Like Dr. Nicole is coaching me through my anxiety right now. She's like, breathe. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take 10 seconds. It's good. That's fantastic. But I mean, I love that there are all kinds of little, like even micro strategies that when we start to get all activated and flooded and like, where's the link? That it is, all that stuff can go out of our mind. But it's like, if you have this toolkit of things, you can reach for this in the moment, be like, okay, I'm all right. Yeah. And that's a big piece of this.
It's like you get a letter in the mail from the IRS and your like first response is to like get a flush of heat and you start sweating and you're like, I can't feel my fingers anymore.
Right.
Like that autonomic arousal, the brain, your emotional brain can kickstart a whole fight, flight, freeze process before your logical brain even knows anything happened.
Completely. That it's immediate, it's automatic, and that it's like your body does things before your brain even knows what your body is doing. But then that's where interesting things start to happen. Oh my gosh. Yeah. We have so much to talk about. You guys, if you're like, oh, I want some of that in my own life from Dr. Nicole, go ahead and submit your questions. And to get this party started, as promised, I did want to pull up a question that we got from a listener in advance, a listener of the podcast that we recorded together on natural remedies for anxiety based on your work, Dr. Nicole. And so this person writes, I dealt with anxiety 20 years ago, so a while back, and did CBT to treat it, so cognitive behavioral therapy. And I have not had an issue with anxiety since. Wow. And so he says, I just want to know Dr. Elisa and Dr. Nicole's opinion on CBT, since I'm clearly a proponent, even though I know it's not a fit for every issue or persons. Okay, so this is somebody who had a good experience with this. But Dr. Nicole, I mean, I know one of the things that we talked about a lot in our interview that we recorded together is that there's a lot more to this picture, and that certainly cognitive strategies and behavioral strategies can be part of it. But the way that you look at this, because of your background, you're seeing many other dimensions because you are trained as a counselor, you have that background, but then you went to medical school. So take us into that and maybe how you see CBT fitting into healing from anxiety. How about that?
I love that. And that's what a story of victory. And
It's great.
I love to hear that. And cognitive behavioral therapy is a top-down approach to healing the mind and the body. And if we go back, for those who just got on, we were just making jokes
Yes.
about I made a joke about the IRS and how you can get a letter from the IRS and get this like flood of panic before you know anything else. And so an example of an effective top down to that, you open the letter from the IRS and they're just like updating you on their phone number or something. And so that logical input is like the stress melts away. You feel so much better. And so that is an example of how using your logical brain can be really effective. And that's the beauty and the gift of top down. And so our brain has the power to create a whole amount of changes physically, emotionally, behaviorally. So I love that. And it's a great place to start. And for many people, it's just the beginning of the conversation. And what we've found in neuroscience and more recent studies in the past 10 years or so is that stress can also get stuck in the body. It can get stuck in the gut. It can get stuck in the nervous system. It can get stuck in non-logical parts of the brain. And so in those cases, maybe somebody else has had the experiences. I've done all the talk therapy. I've tried doing all of the workbooks, the anxiety workbooks, the panic workbooks. I know logically it doesn't make sense, and yet my body is panicking. My heart is racing. My gut is churning. And so then we want to look at the rest of the picture. We want to do the bottom-up therapies where we start to integrate the body with the process.
Definitely. Okay. No, and so you're saying, I mean, that the mind is very powerful. And as we all know, your thoughts can have a direct impact on not just the way you feel, but really your body's physiological response to stress, particularly if you're jumping to conclusions. But you're also bringing up a good point that isn't the whole picture. And that while we can certainly get traction with top-down approaches, there is this bottom-up approach that is really more physiological. And so maybe you could give us some examples of like what that might look like in practice. And then we're going to go into questions. So you guys are like giving a little bit of a taste of Dr. Nicole's philosophy and sort of how she can be of assistance to you. But I want you to be thinking about what's going on in your life and that you want to talk to us about, because that is why Nicole and I are here today. Is not just to showcase Dr. Nicole's amazing knowledge, but really is like to be here for you. And so like who in this crowd right now has experienced anxiety? Like, me, right? Dr. Nicole, like we're all in this together. So Dr. Nicole, give us some thoughts about this bottom-up approach, just to sort of orient our community around what you mean by that. And then we'll take some more questions.
When something stressful happens, our body, our mind, our nervous system, and everything from head to toe will shift in order to make you best able to survive that stressor. And it could be something as basic as I'm in Michigan in the winter and I have to put on a coat. And so that's an adaptation, the coat, right? Yes. So you put on that coat and that adaptation will help you. And so if we shift that metaphor to anxiety, is maybe you grew up in an environment where car horns meant something bad was happening. And so then your body has learned to associate car horns with putting on that coat, which may be your heart rate starts going faster, your vision starts to become more acute. Some people may get anxious, their pupils dilate, your breathing picks up, maybe your muscles get tense. And so then the body starts to store that. Like, okay, I heard a car horn. I know something bad is happening. Now I'm going to just automatically get into this fight, flight, freeze process. And so then let's say that you move from Arizona to Southern California, or from Michigan rather to Southern California. Those adaptations, that coat to hearing car horns and feeling like it's dangerous, is now, it's too hot. It's no longer useful.
Yeah.
And so you can tell yourself that, but if the body has been associated with engaging in this particular process for 20 years, your body is going to have to relearn how to respond differently to that. And so this is helpful for you if you're listening to this and trying to figure out what I'm saying here, is if you ever feel like, it's okay, it's fine, logically no big deal. And yet your heart is pounding, your stomach is churning. Those are the moments when you want to use a bottom-up treatment. Those are the moments when you have to work with the body to get on board with the fact that everything is okay.
Yeah. So that that top down is saying you're fine and is almost like confused at why you feel as anxious as you do. What you're saying is that is an indication that there's something else going on. There's an adaptation, really like an old trauma response in some ways that made a lot of sense in an earlier part of life, but that now is creating these feelings in a way that your thinking brain is like, why are we doing this? So that's how you get a clue.
Yeah. And then we end up with fear of the fear. And so it's like, is my body going to go rogue on me? I don't want to have panic and anxiety. I don't know why it's happening. I don't want to feel anxious, but the body is doing its own thing.
Yeah.
So then we do a bottom-up approach.
Got it. So interesting. Okay, well, here's another question that I have for you, and this came in through our anonymous form. And if you guys have questions about, or even would like to share, your own experiences of anxiety, how it gets expressed in your life. We would love to hear about that. If anybody wants to share in the comments, go right ahead. And if anybody is thinking like, I feel anxious in this situation, or I'm having this experience that I'm not quite sure how to deal with because it triggers my anxiety, that is why Nicole and I are here today, is to talk to you about that. So do not be shy about reaching out. But we did have another question come through this anonymous form. If you'd rather use this than just leave comments in social, you're welcome to do that. That is at my website, growingself.com/dear-Lisa, and we'll get it in real time. But okay, so one is, what are some ways that I can, be my own hero, advocate for myself, manage anxiety in the midst of challenging family dynamics, particularly regarding emotions? So what I think I'm hearing here is that this person is in situations with their family that are creating a lot of that physiological escalation, that elevation, but that a family system that maybe is making it difficult for them to take good care of themselves in those moments. At least that's what I'm reading into the question. And if you happen to be here with us, Nicole and I would love to hear more context. So, what would you say to that?
I'm thinking about, actually, I had a conversation with one of my colleagues here at the office, and she was talking about that, about how every time she goes to her mom's house. So she's an adult, she's married, she has her own home and her own partner and her own family. But when she goes to her mom's house, she feels smaller. She feels like she gets into these patterns where she wants to impress her mom. She doesn't want to say something that's going to disappoint her. She feels like she's always saying or doing the wrong thing. And then she gets activated and starts noticing that she's behaving in ways that she normally wouldn't. So when she shows up at work, she's like a total badass at work. She's like showing up, running the show, making decisions, troubleshooting. But when she goes into this family environment and she's around her mom, it's like a totally different part of her gets activated.
Yeah.
And so what I love in this example is I like to teach about the ping pong exercise. So what I want you to do is I want you to imagine a time and a place and a circumstance where you were owning your ultimate amazingness, right? Noticing what it feels like in your body, like when you feel really good and really confident, or if you could imagine feeling good and confident, what does that feel like? And imagine a specific scenario. And while you notice that scenario, notice the thoughts that you're having, the emotions that come with that. And I really want you to do everything you can to really pull that up in your imagination and that memory. And then if you want to enhance that experience and get the bottom up, get the body involved, you and we did the tapping together last time.
I loved that. I've done that like 3 times since we that.
shame, I'm like, gotta tap. Hold on, everybody.
Hold on, just a sec.
So go listen to the podcast and tap with me and Dr. Lisa. And you do that because what's happening is you're creating new associations in your brain of like this moment when I was an ultimate, total amazing guru, and this physical stimulation, this presence in the moment. And so then you're going to really install that, and you're going to notice that, you're going to pull that up, and your brain is going to recruit around that. And then I want you to imagine going into that family environment, and you're going to ping pong into that contrasting feeling. So my colleague, like, I feel small, I feel insignificant, I feel inferior, I feel embarrassed, I'm tripping over my words. You're going to notice that. You're going to notice what it feels like in the body. You're going to pull that up. You're going to pull up any images or thoughts that come with that. You're going to hold on to that. And then you're going to ping pong back to the ultimate badass self. And so then what you're doing is you're going to start the process of teaching your body, your mind, your nervous system to pivot between states, because flexibility is where it's at. Because otherwise we deal with rigidity, and everything in the nervous system is all about how do we get the nervous system to be more fluid, more flexible, less rigid. So that's the first step. You pull out your ultimate awesome self. Then you notice that self that gets activated in the family environment, those feelings. And then we're going to merge those together. You're going to imagine bringing yourself, your amazing, strong, confident, brave, resourceful, resilient self, and you're going to imagine bringing them into that other image. And then you're going to allow that resourceful self to show you how you want that to play out. And so that's an at-home ping pong technique, just one of lots of techniques that we could talk about to get you started.
That is so good. And I mean, this is reminding me of that really powerful technique that we talked about on the podcast, that I loved so much, because it's really incorporating these elements of EMDR, which is like a, somatic almost treatment for trauma and anxiety, but also like inner child work, this like adult self kind of coming back in to support the child who's struggling with this residual anxious reaction in a really powerful way. So this is good stuff. Thank you. Thank you on behalf of our listener.
Good question. That helped me a lot. I learned that, and I was like, oh, hallelujah. It was so good.
Well, okay. And so let's take another question, if this is okay with you. Here is one that I think we should definitely speak to. Okay, here we go. Let's tackle this one together. Nicole, I don't know if you could see this, but Corey writes in, oh my gosh, like who among us cannot relate to this? I'm going through a really tough divorce. I am completely heartbroken, sitting here in tears, just listening to this. And I'm anxious because I've lost my best friend. So there is definitely I personally think that anxiety is like almost too light a word for the kind of existential terror that can come along with having an unwanted separation from our primary person. If there's a relationship that you did not want to end and that is severed, it is broken, there is a natural, normal physiological response that happens in humans, which is, it feels like terror, right? It's like the worst thing that can happen. And so I think in a lot of your work and a lot of your book, you're probably talking about how we deal with either day-to-day, anxious moments, or that anxiety experience that is more enduring, that may be connected to old stuff. It has these deep hooks in us. But I'm curious, in our listener's question, do you have any thoughts or advice for how to handle that like panic or terror when you're going through something that is like objectively scary, and not just mentally, but like these are powerful, deep physiological responses? Yeah. Do you have what are your thoughts? And I know this is a hard one, so I don't want to put you on the spot, but it's real.
It is. I honor I honor you, and I'm so, so glad that you're here. And
Yeah.
I'm so sorry that this is happening and you're suffering. And suffering is something that any humane person would want to help you avoid. We want to do what we can to relieve suffering, and yet your suffering is an indicator of your love. Your suffering is an indicator of your humanity. Your suffering is an indicator of what it means to be in relationship and have attachment and to be human. And so I honor your suffering.
Yeah.
And your symptoms are your body's way of trying to deal with and process what is happening to you. And especially when there's so much that's out of your control.
Totally.
And so the question is how do we suffer in a way that moves us through the suffering as opposed to us getting stuck in the suffering? And so the question is how do we suffer? And the way that we can suffer in a trauma-informed way is to do exactly what you're doing. You're here.
Yeah.
You're honest. You're acknowledging it. You're letting the tears flow. You're holding space for it. And what we deny will amplify, and what we resist will persist. And so you just holding that space and acknowledging that you're really hurting, deeply, deeply hurting, is one of the most powerful things you can do. And once you've acknowledged that, and once you've noticed the way it's showing up in your body and your nervous system and your emotions and all of the things, is then we can start to employ strategies to help you move through that so it doesn't get stuck.
Yeah.
And this involves plugging into supportive relationships. So who in your life can help move you through this? Who in your life can hold space for you without just giving you advice or telling you to do this thing or do that thing? Who in your life can hold space for you to be unapologetically broken? And if you don't have that person in your life, then a counselor, especially a counselor that's trauma-informed, like somebody who does grief work or EMDR, divorce counseling. So relationships, personal and professional, spiritual. So if you're a spiritual person, is figuring out how to dial into that source of the bigger part of what you are, the bigger part of what it means to be human and suffer and have relationships and loss. So whether that's a podcast or a mentor or a teacher or something like that supports you. But then we want to think about biologically what we can do to help the body and the nervous system through this, because divorce is incredibly stressful. It can interfere with our sleep. Our body produces stress hormones. We go into autonomic arousal, which can cause headaches and body aches and all the 9 types of anxiety, depressive anxiety, anger anxiety. And so start to be really mindful about noticing what your body is telling you it needs to help it through the hard work of moving you towards healing. And that's going to be different for everybody, but basic things that I can think of just to get you started is to make sure that you're nourishing your body and nourishing inflammation. And so I'm thinking about soups, broths. I'm thinking about grounding, nourishing foods, especially when we look at it from the perspective of traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda. They're all about the nuance and what we're putting into our bodies. And so when we're in grief, oftentimes energetically, we can be stuck in our heads and we're like, what if this? What if this? Did I do this? This fight, this, all these things. And so there's a lot of energy that's in our head. And so we want to try to ground that. And so traditional Ayurveda teachers emphasize something that's nourishing, like roots, potatoes, carrots, things that grow on the ground. If you consume animal proteins, bone broths, some things that are going to be really anti-inflammatory and nourishing. And then, I love using herbs and natural remedies to help through the grieving process, but we want to use them based on your individual needs. And so I teach about how to learn about that in the book, and we could for sure do like a whole session on herbalism for healing grief. But if I could only pick one herb, may I share one herb?
Oh, please.
Yeah, I love Leonoris.
Okay.
The other name for Leonoris is motherwort. You can get it at most health food stores. And the name is apt because Leonoris has the ability to calm anxiety, calm stress, calm the nervous system. And motherwort, it's like the mother that we all need that maybe we didn't all get. And so it can be a very soothing and encouraging warm blanket around us. So you might ask your doctor or your trusted herbalist if that would be an option.
That's great. I didn't know that. Awesome. Thank you so much. Because and I'm glad that we're talking about this because you're right. There are different kinds of anxiety, and there's that, going through a patently traumatic experience type of anxiety. And I will just add really quickly, and then we'll move on to another question because we have so many amazing questions coming in. And these are fantastic, and I want to make sure we make space for everybody. I will say that when it comes to a broken attachment bond, there are also stages of this that when we attach to other humans, we do so on not just mentally and emotionally, but on literally a physiological level. We have all kinds of systems in our bodies that are designed to bond to other humans. And in my experience, because of my work in heartbreak recovery, I've noticed that particularly at the very beginning, there is that flooded, big, physiologically based anxious response. It feels like terror. And thank you to Dr. Nicole for sharing so many of those strategies to just take care of yourself as you're going through this very hard experience, because it's awful. I mean, I've had a lot of clients who report it feeling literally worse than a death.
Yeah.
So it needs to be validated. Oh, so much good stuff.
You asked about the spelling. May I share that?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for catching that. Yes, please.
Yes.
Spell it. Here, I'll put it in the comments too.
It's Leonoris, Leonurus.
Urus or motherwort.
Or motherwort, yes. And
okay, got it.
I like it in the form of tea, tincture. It's wonderful. So it's a good place to start.
That's so good. Okay. Well, hey, let's hop to some other questions. So we had a couple of people get in touch, again, through social media prior to this. Here's one. This is a good one. So many people can relate. How can I stop creating anxious thoughts about abandonment and betrayal?
Abandonment and betrayal.
Yeah.
So what I'm thinking of originally is that being hypervigilant and looking out for abandonment and betrayal is and has protected you at some point in your life. And so that's a winter coat. That's something that you learned to do at some point along the way to protect you. And so perhaps there was some sort of an attachment loss when you were younger. Maybe it wasn't about what happened to you, but also maybe it's about what didn't happen to you. Maybe there were unmet needs. And I think that it's harder to see that, and perhaps maybe we're not talking about it enough. I think about Bruce Perry's book, What Happened to You, and he talks about all the things that occur to us or that happen to us, but what about missed opportunities or neglect or loss, those things that don't happen? And so when you look at that symptom, you look at that, okay, engage in this behavior because there's an underneath unmet need or there's a pattern that's been adaptive to me. So I would encourage you is to do a timeline exercise. And you can do this in two ways. If you're more of a logical, analytical brain, is you can draw a timeline on a piece of paper from birth to present, and then write down all the major events that did or did not happen throughout your life, and then write down how you had to change, even in little ways, to adapt to that or cope with that or be flexible or pivot with that. So that's if you're more of an analytical person. If you're more of an intuitive person and you like to do more of that inner work and that looking within, that introspection, kind of closing your eyes, then you would do, which we expanded on in the podcast, Dr. Lisa and I, is you would notice that urge, maybe even pull up a specific example of when you notice yourself engaging in that behavior. You notice what it feels like and really try to figure out, without analyzing it, where you feel that in your body, because the body knows. And then you're going to go all the way down the timeline. Imagine there's a thread, there's a through line all the way to your past. And then I want you to find the earliest time that you remember feeling that way. And that's where the magical work is going to happen, is you go to that earliest moment and you figure out what did or didn't happen that I am adapting to. And then you can do the work that we talk about more in the podcast to actually clear that pattern at the root. And for a lot of people, that exercise in and of itself is game changing. For other people, there's other memories and other attachment figures and other patterns that also need to be cleared. But that strategy, those both you can do at home today.
Yeah. I love it. And that's such good advice, because that message around it's easy to get almost stuck in the present in some ways when we're thinking about these. It's like about this relationship and how I feel about this person or what's happening or not happening. But what you're saying is like the roots of this go so much deeper. So to really like unhook from the here and now and find that source inside of you by following those physical sensations to make contact with what this is really about. And then you can use these strategies that you're teaching to start healing that on a different level. It's not a relationship problem.
I love what you're saying. And it's bringing to mind, there's this quote, it's like all the world's a stage and everyone is an actor.
Yeah.
And so it's like, we're going to keep from a place of personal power, we're going to keep recreating these opportunities for healing and repatterning and reprogramming. Right. So it's like Dr. Lisa was saying, it's not all necessarily about the relationship right now, although perhaps this relationship is activating you because it's a pattern that you've noticed before and is problematic, and the relationship may need an audit, but it may also be an indication of a deeper, more old personal wound that is now being brought to the surface through this relationship that you have an opportunity to explore.
It's so good. All right. Well, let's answer another question that came in from Instagram. And this is interesting. I'm going to be very curious about your response to this one, Nicole. I have been dealing with fear/anxiety driving on the freeway, but I've never been in an accident. However, I avoid freeways as much as possible, and I can't seem to conquer this. So the person is saying there's not an identifiable thing, life experience attached to freeways, but like this is enough to the degree that they're actually constricting their lives to protect themselves from what sounds like a very powerful, anxious response. And I know we don't have a ton of information, but where would you even start with this? What would you say?
Yeah. Well, there's a reason, and so your symptoms are trying to communicate with you. It just isn't obvious or apparent. And so we want to be curious and continue to be curious. It could be that the brain and the nervous system are so associative, and a lot of that is going on beneath your conscious awareness. And so we get over 11 billion data points a second, and the brain processes like 50. And so that's what we're aware of happening. But all this other stuff that's happening we don't even know about could continue to be affecting us. And one of my favorite psychotherapists, Carl Jung, would always say, what remains in the unconscious will continue to affect us today, and we will call it fate. Yeah. And so it may be that there's something that occurs in the interstate that is reminding your brain, your nervous system of something else. So there's still an opportunity for exploration. I encourage you and urge you with that. But we don't have to wait to find that to really start changing your life and opening your world up again. And so there's a 4-step process that I teach about, where step number 1 is you're going to create some protective mechanisms for the body when it goes into panic.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to keep it in your car. And so you're going to make a panic pack, and I want you to get a nice little bag. You can put it in your glove box or in the little armrest next to the driver's seat, or if you're a passenger, you can reach it. And you're going to put in a cold pack. You're going to put in 2 essential oils of your preference. You're going to put in a cut straw. You're going to put in fidgets. You're going to maybe even come up with a playlist that you can play on your radio, because you want to start thinking about how you can stimulate the body so that if you do go into panic, that you can stop it right away. So that's, first of all, make that.
Love that.
Then the second step is you're going to start doing that top-down work that we talked about earlier in this conversation and trying to explore what might be going on that's producing anxiety. Anxiety if you're a passenger on the freeway. Does it matter what time of day it is? I had a patient once years ago who had been in a car accident in the rain, and then she drove on the highway and it rained and it made her anxious. And then from then on, the highway was dangerous in her nervous system. So the second step is all about kind of trying to figure that out. And then the third step is then bridging the gap between the mind and the body. And so you're going to start to practice being mindfully aware of those whispers of anxiety. And so maybe you'll think about driving on the highway, and then maybe you'll be a passenger on the highway, and you're going to start to expose yourself to the highway while being mindful. And so you're going to start to notice the data from the body. And then the fourth step is then you're going to start to practice what it's like to bring yourself into panic and then bring yourself out. And so that might look like, I'm going to go on a high ropes course, and I'm going to feel my heart pounding and my trembling in my body. And I'm going to have control over that because I can go down and I can calm my body and go back up. And so one thing that you described is I can't seem to conquer this fear, and I avoid the freeway. And so we want to start working you back towards getting on the freeway, because the more that you do that successfully through this 4-step process of retraining your panic pathways, you will conquer the anxiety and you will expand and be able to drive more places.
Yeah. And that, can we just stay here for just 1 second? Because I think that this is a very important point is, and this is something that I talk with my clients about. I think a natural tendency when we do feel anxious is to avoid whatever it is that we associate with anxiety, which makes sense. Like it's like anxiety is a protective feeling. It's saying danger. But that what happens is that then we enshrine anxiety, and it grows and becomes more powerful. And people do not like this idea at all for totally understandable reasons. But part of the path to healing is that in safe ways, you actually do need to lean in and be putting yourself in situations where you can practice feeling the anxiety and then calming yourself back down again successfully. Because if you don't do that, it's like this big monster. That's almost how we chip away at it. That has been my experience with anxiety, and also personally too. I mean, when I used to have a terrible fear of flying, actually. Same. It was awful for me. And I don't have that at all anymore, but using some of these strategies, it helps.
Yes. Yeah. And we used to call it exposure therapy or flooding, but I think that we have to teach the nervous system how to become aroused and then how to go to out of arousal before we then put them in the flooding situation. You don't want to just walk in there and be like, put yourself out.
Because that's called re-traumatizing yourself, and nobody wants that.
Exactly. Yes.
Oh my gosh, such good questions. And hey, we just have a little bit more time with Dr. Nicole. So we have another few questions that have come in that I want to be sure that we answer during our time together. But if you have been dealing with anxiety in your life, let Nicole and I know what's going on with you so that we can speak to it. Okay, so here's another question that came in from somebody through our little anonymous form. Okay, and so here's one, and I think that you may have spoken to some of the remedies, like as you were speaking with other people. But here's the question: how can I stop having anxiety attacks where I can't breathe, and like how can I stop waking up with a knot in my stomach? So this is somebody who has very intense anxiety episodes that are happening, like, attacks. But also, I mean, and I've had clients who have dealt with this too, so much physiological anxiety that they are waking up with literally knots in their stomach, or even like sick to their stomach. I've had that come up with clients. Can you speak to that a little bit, and where you would even start at, with the understanding, everybody, that this is not like a switch anybody's gonna flip. It will be a journey of healing. But Dr. Nicole, where would you even start?
Yeah. So we take this information and then we get curious about it.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, so my inroad is probably not the logical brain in this
Yeah.
example because you're sleeping. You're
You're
not
sleeping.
thinking. Maybe you're drinking, but it's definitely not like prefrontal logical part of the brain. And so
Right.
that's not our inroad. But you
Hmm.
do have an inroad of gut anxiety. And so you have a knot in your stomach and it's hard to breathe. So we have some gut anxiety and we have some chest anxiety. Say, okay, thank you, body. I appreciate the messages that you're giving me. I'm listening. And then we're going to dive deeper. I want you to tell me more. Okay. So the gut anxiety, that knot in the stomach, that happens when I wake up in the morning. And so then we can say, okay, what's happening in the moments before and when I wake up? Okay. So I know my cortisol is starting to rise in the morning. I know that my melatonin production is going down in the morning and my serotonin levels are going up in the morning. Maybe you're noticing that in this phase of life, something changing, something's going on hormonally. I've had some other stuff happening hormonally. Andropause in males, menopause, perimenopause in females. Maybe it's part of the cycle. So we start to get really curious. Okay, so it's also in my gut. So now I've looked at the timing that this is happening in. Something with my gut could be going on. I have an opportunity to maybe start exploring, maybe chemically or hormonally, what's going on. But my gut is talking. So what's happening? So we've been in rest and digest all night long. So our bowels have been digesting. We're working on detoxification. We're working on healing. So is there something that may be out of balance in that digestive process? Okay, so now I can learn about, all right, what am I doing in my lifestyle that's affecting my gut in positive or negative ways? Okay, well, I did eat a bag of cotton candy yesterday. Or I noticed I had a little bit more alcohol. Or I noticed that I didn't eat because I was so stressed,
Yeah.
right? So you start looking at the system that's giving you the information, and then you use that as an opportunity to dive deeper. And I actually have an example of this with a client, if I can share it
Oh,
briefly.
yes, please do.
I had a woman who came in to see me, and she had a lot of gut type anxiety symptoms, and they would actually wake her up in the middle of the night. And so she came in and we're like, okay, something goofy is happening in the middle of the night. And so we ran some basic tests. We looked at her thyroid, we looked at her hormones, but we also did a cortisol test. And she did a cortisol sample. It was a urine test. She provided that urine sample in the middle of the night when she woke up with that pain. And the test showed that her level spiked really high.
During the
And so
night.
during the night. And
Interesting.
so she's getting this spike in stress hormones. Of course, it's going to cause issues with the gut. Of course, she's going to get tightness in the chest. Of course, she's going to wake up and feel anxious. So now we have an objective test measure of something that may be contributing to her symptoms. So then we could go deeper, right? So your symptoms are like little threads that are coming out of your blanket or the ball of yarn. And if we can travel down, they're giving us really important information. And so where you have the power to start right now, if the person asking this question isn't, you're not a doctor, is get curious about what you're doing with the body, your behaviors, your thoughts, and start journaling it. And then bring all of that data to a doctor that you trust, who can then get curious from a medical perspective. Okay, these are the tests that we could run. Maybe this person would have benefited from a psychobiotic or an herb that balances cortisol levels. So I love and honor that you're noticing that, and let your body tell you what's going on deeper.
Yeah. Gosh, I just love this approach so much. And, you know, and I say this as a psychologist, and I think there's a lot of validity for taking a look at things mentally, emotionally, psychologically. But I tell you what, over the years, I have been humbled over and over again by the efforts to manage things from that mental, emotional, psychological part. It's not the whole story. Our bodies influence so many different things of how we feel. And I love that you're encouraging people to take a larger perspective around what is going on with your health, your lifestyle, your habits. Do some physical tests as opposed to just assuming that it is entirely in the realm of psychology or cognition. It just gives people so much more to work with. So anyway, I'm really happy that you're talking about this. Yeah.
Yes. I had a patient today. She's like, I went to the gastroenterologist and I've been having terrible gut anxiety. And he's like, well, it's all in your head. Your gut is fine.
Woo. Oh.
And so I want to honor you that your symptoms they're here to be your allies. They're here to help you heal. And we have to look at you as a whole person and figure out what you can do to take back power and become companions with your symptoms. Because then you won't have anxiety anymore. You'll be like, oh, I hear you, symptoms. Thank you for telling me about how I can help be healthier.
Totally. And did anybody else just get a little bit activated by hearing that story about feeling so minimized by what that doctor had all in your head? Like, how incredibly invalidating. It is such a real experience. And just because doctor, your little subset of medicine, doesn't reveal a specific medical cause for why your gut would be hurting, like, that is just so anyway. Okay, sorry. I'm getting like,
I know. I'm
going to calm down. I'm going to do my 60 seconds of deep breathing right now. Okay. Well, and hey, I know we're just about out of time. We had one more question come through that was such a great question that we have to make time for this. So really quick, here's one that came in on our anonymous form, and it said, it seems like anxiety is meant to help us be aware of the risks in the world so that we can stay safe. Right? Fear is valid. How do we balance anxiety that comes to threaten our health and experiences while also building and maintaining awareness and conscious navigation for ourselves and each other in a deeply harmful world full of risks to women, gender nonconformity folks, BIPOC folks? And so I think what they're asking is, how do you manage anxiety that is unproductive, unhelpful, toxic to you, while also holding on to, and I don't know if you're the same here, but I conceptualize anxiety and legitimate and healthy fear as being two very different things, and that we need fear it is a positive emotion. It protects us from situations that are patently dangerous to us. And so this person is saying that they're aware that they live in a world that could be very dangerous to them personally. So how to hang on to those pieces in order to have that part of their emotional guidance system be like safe and unsafe and mobilize defenses when they are actually needed, versus an experience of anxiety that feels toxic, unhelpful, unproductive, bad for them. Or do you see a difference there? I might view this differently than you do. I'm a big fan of fear. So
I would love to hear your perspective also, and I have a thought if I could share it.
Yes, I would love to hear this. But I mean, because the situation is so real. I mean, people live, and some people more than others live in a dangerous world, right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So the big difference, I think, here in finding the nuance, because there is wisdom in people who have health anxiety and maybe a label of hypochondriasis, and there's like every little thing creates a sense of terror, as opposed to creating a companionship type relationship with anxiety and determining what you can do about it. And I think the rate limiting factor here is a personal sense of power. So when you have symptoms come up, I want you to ask yourself, where do I have power in this? Where can I reclaim agency? Because if you're just having, if you're like doom scrolling on social media and you're hearing about all these awful, horrible things that are happening and your body is going into vicarious trauma, fight, flight, freeze, and you're reading about all the injustices, or maybe you're encountering the injustices at work or in your personal life or even in your own friend groups, is I want you to look at that sign, that indicator from your body, however it's showing up: panic, anxiety, rage, a headache, nausea, like clenching your teeth, whatever it is. I want you to look at that and say, where can I find my personal sense of agency here? Do you need to take that and put more protective factors in place for yourself? Do you need to have more security? Do you need to go to the doctor and get annual blood work done? Do you need to do an audit of your relationships and your boundaries? Do you need to do an audit of your social media consumption? And then I want you to think about, when I have just fear coming up, is this fear going to save and protect me? And I want to honor that and allow that fear to help me run from the metaphorical tiger. So I want you to look at these symptoms, these experiences, as opportunities for agency, because then it's no longer a symptom.
Yeah.
It's a gift that you get to work with.
Yeah. Great advice. Thank you so much on behalf of our listener. That was fantastic. Well, this has been such a pleasure. Here, let me take this last comment back out again. So Dr. Nicole Cain, this has been such a wonderful conversation. And I'm just thinking about how generous you were on the podcast that we recorded together. And you dropped so many just tips and tools and fantastic advice for listeners. And I had the same experience again today. Like, I knew that I would. And so you guys, a lot of what Dr. Nicole is talking about is coming from the book that is about to drop. It is, again, it's called Panic Proof: The New Holistic Solution to End Your Anxiety Forever. I am not a paid spokesmodel, just a big fan of Dr. Nicole's work. And if you would like to check this out, I believe that this is the comment. I'm going to send out a link. This is the link where you can pre-order Dr. Nicole's book so that you'll get it right when it releases at Penguin Random House. But that's where you can get that. And Dr. Nicole, you also have some special things going on for people who...
For people who find me from you, as a thank you for you and just to love on your audience, is when you pre-order the book, when you get the book, is just forward a copy of your receipt to my team at hi@drnicolecain.com.
I'll do that.
And then we'll give you a free month in my membership. I have a beautiful Wellness Collective membership where I have recipes and algorithms and tests and all of the things, and I answer questions in there. And so you can get in there for a month as a thank you for being a part of Dr. Lisa's community and pre-ordering my book.
That is awesome. And again, I am not a paid sponsor. We do not have an affiliate thing going on. I think that anxiety is just, it's so common. And I think that there is a time and place for mental health treatment that is oftentimes part of the puzzle, but it is not the whole story. And what I, especially over the last couple of years, have just gained so much more understanding and respect and awareness for the physicality of a lot of the things that are happening for us mentally, emotionally, even relationally. And so that's why I'm so pleased to be able to support your work and encourage people to explore that dimension of wellness, because it is intrinsic to love, happiness, and success. And that's why I'm here. And I think that's why you're here too. So
thank you.
Good.
I just honor you so much.
Thank you
for the work you're doing. You're just incredible.
Well, it's been my pleasure. Okay, so you guys have the link to Dr. Nicole's book. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you everybody for writing in with your questions. Oh, if you haven't caught it yet, here, let me share. I'm just going to go, I think I have to go back to this screen, sorry, to get this out the door. Latest episode of Love, Happiness, and Success. And you can hear, oh no, that was the wrong one. It was, here we go, with, maybe it's this one.
Yay! No, that's Penguin.
Oh, there we go. No, it is here. I got it out. Natural. So growingself.com/natural anxiety relief is where you can find that original podcast with me and Dr. Nicole. Okay. Well, thank you again. And hopefully you and I will have a chance to connect again soon.
Yes, please. I would love that.
Good deal. All right. Take care, you guys. Bye.
Bye, everyone.